YNABers, my name is Jesse Meekum from YNAB. It stands for You Need a Budget. Yes, you do. This is another Whiteboard Wednesday. We are on the home stretch for our course where we're talking all about investing based on the book I wrote on Amazon called Invest Like a Pro. Today, we're going to talk about investments and the vehicles they ride in. For instance, and this is where someone makes a mistake. You heard someone say something like, I don't know if I should invest in stocks or bonds or maybe my Roth IRA. They don't understand what they're saying right there. The Roth IRA is just a vehicle in which your investments ride along. The 401k, Roth 401k, Roth IRA, traditional IRA. Some people call them IRAs. I don't. You have different kinds of solo 401ks, simple IRAs. There are these things called KIOGs or something like that. You have the 403b if you have the thrift savings plan if you're in the military. Did I say 401k already? Anyway, there are loads and loads. A lot of the weird names come from the lawmaker that sponsored the bill that created it for the tax code. And I should say, before we get really into this, this is all basically U.S. focused, although today actually won't be, just this little bit here. Or like 401k, that is actually the section of the IRS code where it's discussed. So forget all those numbers and letters and things for just a moment and understand that the real difference between these vehicles, there may have be some that have a little more headache involved, like paperwork wise. There may be some that have limits on when you can take money out and things like that. But the first thing you must look at, first thing is the principle of tax deferred, meaning taxed later or taxed now, taxed before or taxed after. When we're doing this discussion talking about taxes, we're talking about money that you put in, and also then once that money's riding along in the vehicle, is it paying a toll? And if you were to think about taxes as a toll and your vehicle is riding on the road of investment growth, because you're following every other thing we've talked about so far, riding on that road of investment growth, is it having to pay a toll along the way? As the vehicle is going along and we're recruiting more and more dollars and that car is filling up, that vehicle is filling up with more and more dollars, you might have it be stopped, you got to kick some dollars out and pay taxes. And then you got to have it stopped again, you kick some dollars out and pay taxes. If you just have some normal brokerage account, you just decide, I'm going to go to my bank, I'm going to invest in this mutual fund, and that mutual fund grows and then you sell it, you would pay taxes on that sale. It would be a capital gains tax. If, however, you had that same mutual fund and you did it inside of a vehicle, potentially the vehicle you choose means that you wouldn't pay taxes on that. And you can buy and sell inside that vehicle, allocating different things. We wouldn't do that because we know that we should just kind of buy and hold. But for the sake of this example, you can do all of that and there are no taxable events. There are no gains to be had until the very end when you pull the money out. So when we're talking about taxed before or taxed after, we're talking about that growth that's deferred. Most of the vehicles, actually any vehicle, pretty sure that's checked, fact check me in the comments if you want, but I believe any vehicle that we're talking about now is going to have the growth of that investment deferred on taxation until you actually pull it out. Where everyone gets hung up is the money that you put into the vehicle. If it, as one example, is just a traditional IRA, then you say, I'm going to put $3,000 into that investment vehicle, right? And then on your tax return, you can deduct $3,000, meaning you don't pay taxes on $3,000 of your income. It's just a normal deduction, very, very, very standard. So you can do that with a 401k, traditional IRA, those types of things. Let's say that your tax rate was 20%, so I can do my math easily. You would put in that $3,000, and then on your tax return, you would say, I'm reducing my income from blah, less $3,000, which means your tax savings for that little maneuver would be $3,000 times your marginal tax rate. In this case, we said it was 20%. So you saved $600 in taxes. And for that reason, a lot of people will get really hung up when you talk about tax deferred versus, tax now. A lot of people get hung up on the tax rates. What are they going to be? Well, guess what? Nobody knows what they're going to be. The president doesn't know what they're going to be. Congress doesn't know what they'll be. And in 40 years, nobody knows what they're going to be. So when you're talking about how to invest and which vehicle you should use and you're trying to predict, it's easy enough to know what you're paying for taxes now. Well, maybe not right now, but soon, then that's fine. You know that, but what will you pay years down the road when you're a multimillionaire? Will you be paying a lot, a little? We don't know. Tax rates have been as high as 92%, and they've been as low as 0, right? So we don't know about the tax rate, and that's why we can't let the tax rate enter into the equation when we're doing our analysis on which way we should go. Now, what people will then do, in order to promote the idea of tax deferred, they'll say, well, hey, I'm going to put in that $3,000, and that saved me $600 in taxes. That means I can invest more, right? So I can actually invest $3,600, where the person that is doing a tax to now maneuver, they can only put in the $3,000, and then that's that. They don't get the tax savings. But there's only one person I know that well, a lot of people think like it and write blogs about it, but there's only one person I know that actually does it. His name is Nate. He's a CFA or a CFP, a CPA. He's probably CIA. And Nate would do that. No one else I know. So they may say, oh, $3,000, and then I'll save the $600, and then I'll end up doing it. It just doesn't happen. One, the savings from your tax refund come far later, so you're off in la la land at that point. You forgot your plan. Two, the events don't sync up. So it's not like I'm putting in the $3,000 now into that vehicle, and $600 is coming back to me right now. It just doesn't work that way. So what ends up happening is people are saying, oh, I'm going to do the tax deferred vehicle because I saved $600 in taxes. And that's great. That's great. Perfectly fine. But it doesn't mean that you're doing it for the reason of having your investments actually grow more, because that will be taxed later. And you're going to be paying for it. Maybe more, maybe less. We don't know, so we don't care, right? But it will be taxed later. If you go with the taxed now route, something like a Roth 401k or Roth IRA, that just means that you'd be paying the tax now. So in that instance, if you had $3,000, someone would say, hey, no, you don't have $3,000, you're paying 20% in taxes. You actually have $2,400 to invest, therefore you're investing less, therefore it will grow to be less, and it won't be worth it. But we don't do the analysis that way. When we're looking at should we put money into this vehicle, we're not saying how much will I have to pay in taxes, how much will I not have to pay in taxes, and what will I do with that savings, or what will I do with this extra cost. We don't do any of that. All we do is say, how much money do I have around? What's in my budget? How much cash is in my budget? And if you have $3,000 in cash, you're going to invest $3,000 in cash in any one of these, although there are limits to these. I think it's $5,000 now, maybe even $5,500. But we don't sit there and do all of this mental math. We just say, how much cash do I have on hand? I'd like to max these out. Okay, you max them out. If you're maxing them out, then the taxed before actually makes sense, because you're actually talking about more money, since that donation will be taxed later. Right? You see how confusing this gets? This is unbelievably confusing. I get confused just talking about it. At the end of the day, either vehicle works great. And if you wanted to flip a coin and just go that way, that would be fine. Actually, there are YNABers that put into their 401k, I mean the team members at this point, that put both into their 401k. They're like, I'll go 50% tax now, 50% tax later. That's cool too. It doesn't really matter. This is one of those details that scare people, and my video probably didn't help. Scare people with just being like, oh, I don't get it, I don't get it. They freeze, they don't do anything, they don't invest at all. Right? They don't even invest just straight up without using a vehicle, and that's an absolute tragedy. So, what do? If you are taxed at what you feel like is a high rate right now, maybe look to the tax deferral, traditional IRA, traditional 401k. If your tax rate is fairly low, and you feel like, based on dart throwing, that your tax rate will be higher later, you could probably go with the tax before. If you don't care, just flip a coin, right? I personally, and again, this goes back to a little bit of a mathy situation, I like the tax before because after tax, because the limits are absolutely the same, after tax, you actually get a higher limit. And there's math that backs that up, but I don't want to write it on the board. So that was an extremely confusing episode today, and for that I apologize. I hope the two of you that have still stayed for the rest of this video appreciated the summary where I simplified it. I probably should have led with that. I will see you guys next week, where we will talk about specific vehicles, and then most importantly, we will talk about starting. I'll see you next week.